from your own experiences and working with your providers, when these kinds of phrases pop up, what does that feel like for you in the room? And like, what does that feel like for you when providers might use more judgmental language?
I definitely feel like it's extremely stressful. And I feel that a lot of the time when my provider uses that type of language, it's almost voicing the negative thoughts that I have toward myself, almost like confirming them, which I think doesn't do very good for my mental health. And rather than having like an objective or like helpful tone, it's critical and it hurts. Just numbers in general. I understand that A1C and weight and other things are really important when it comes to diabetes management, but I feel like in my experience, I've had a lot of like highlighting of fluctuations in those things, which are really normal and natural, but just always being brought up, especially in a negative light, for example, like weight gain and whatnot. I was diagnosed when I was like 8 years old, so there are obviously going to be a lot of changes in my body, my hormones, everything. So definitely tone down the uh, discussion about my weight or what I look like, and it's just not helpful. So
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for that, because I think you're right. A lot of times these are normal fluctuations. And, even if they're not necessarily normative for some patients, it can still feel very challenging to hear what's maybe not working. Or sometimes it might feel like an attack, right, on you when providers are really focusing on the negative or hyper focusing on numbers. And we really want to teach that, thinking about inclusive language, thinking of you as the whole person, that this is something that's your life and could really impact you on the day to day. And how can we best have these conversations with you in a healthy manner? So I think you make some really excellent points. Thank you for sharing that. Just thinking about what Dr. Vesco had asked there about really using that language like diabetic and non-compliant and good and bad numbers, or the real test being the A1C. What are your thoughts on that?
Clayton was diagnosed with type 1 when he was 2 years old, and even day of diagnosis, and then going back for our first visit after diagnosis, which was 3 months later, we had issues like that. And it was terribly hurtful to me, my husband, and my 2-year-old son. And then, we literally looked for doctors for probably about a year and a half, 2 years. And fortunately, we were able to stumble upon our doctor, who we still currently have. And thank God she's like an angel. So we don't have issues with her at all. And the bond that we have with her is just amazing. So we don't have to deal with that currently, but we did in the very beginning, which was really tough as well, because he was so little and we had no idea what we were doing. We really had no idea what type 1 diabetes was. And so that was hard emotionally. I mean, it was a really rough, probably 2 years of our lives. But once we found our doctor, we knew that it was a fit, and we thank our lucky stars every day that she's in our life. And so we don't have to deal with things like that. But I definitely see how it can be emotionally draining, especially on teenagers and older kids.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really profound that you see the differences and you've been able to say like, okay, initially upon diagnosis, this was such a stressful experience already. And so adding on a component of not feeling heard or feeling that, you're not able to really express yourself. And it just adds on to the hurt, like Jennifer had talked about, of kind of maybe some worries or thoughts you're already feeling or already experiencing. And then how different that experience is when you're with a provider that actually hears you and listens, and that you can really build that bond of teamwork, which is something we really want to advocate for, of working together with patient provider populations, really, having each other to speak and to communicate and share your voice and feel heard. So glad that you're experiencing that now.
Yeah, we actually saw her today, and that word came up in our meeting. We said that this is all going to work with teamwork, with the three of us, and my husband included. So it's definitely a huge proponent for that.
I'm curious to kind of hear from both of you. This is kind of a side question as well. Like, what would you like your providers to know? Like how can they start that conversation with you in setting goals? Like, right? Like, what would be your preference for like how to start a visit with your provider?
I would say asking me how I am, maybe what is going well, what is going not so well. If there have been any changes with anything, whether it's like personal or life or anything, or just diabetes related, I think that would set a really good baseline for the start of the visit and lead into helpful discussions about what can be improved and whatnot.
And
That's
I
good.
really think our physician does very well with that,
Okay.
trying to make sure he's focused and just
Mm.
trying to help out with what he needs help with, things that they notice.
Sure. So trying to be helpful and collaborative and pull out strategies or ways to assist you rather than like point the blame.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that makes it feel better. Feel like you actually feel empowered to leave your visit and make some positive changes. What advice would you give them about how to like approach that with a patient?
Always look at them as a person still. Like even though they got a disease, they're still a person like you. And I know like you wouldn't want somebody coming up to you calling you out of your name just because you're sick. So I would try to tell them something like that. Like, just be mindful of people's feelings.
Yeah. Being mindful of feelings and treating you as a whole person. I love that. Dwanda, do you have anything to add to that or thoughts or experiences on your end?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Try not to like target the bad things as much. Try to like tell them how to progress instead of, you know, the negative is what does it. So it's like try to maneuver around that, try to give out pointers, which our physician is very good with that.
Great.
So we have had a point of time where things got really deep. We
Yeah.
shed tears, he was diagnosed in 2016, so he wasn't born with it. So it's
Got it.
still something he's learning. He's
Yeah.
getting better with it. So
For me, a specific scenario that I think I want to discuss is I think it was highlighted in the video as well, where my physician was speaking mostly directly to like my mother, my guardian, rather than asking me questions or asking if I had any questions. And I remember like sitting there just kind of looking at them have a conversation, and it felt like I wasn't even in the room when it was really important for me to have my questions asked or even just be regarded or asked, how are things going for you? Because I was trying to learn how to manage my diabetes rather than how my mother do it. So I remember leaving and I didn't think that any of my questions were answered or anything was much clearer for me. And I felt like I was just going to have my mother do everything for me all the time because my physician didn't want to include me in that narrative or conversation.
That's so powerful, Jennifer. I am so glad you bring that up just because it's tough, right? When you're working in pediatric clinics and parents do play a big role maybe in navigating or have in the past for you. But now when you're getting older, you're transitioning to more independent care and you really want to have that voice heard and really be a part of the process, right? How do you think that provider could have done things differently to kind of help you feel like you had that voice and you were learning things yourself and that your questions were answered leaving the visit?
I definitely think that they could have included or asked what the situation of managing my diabetes looks like now and what I want it to look like. In that transition period of my mother like loosening a little bit of her control over it and then giving it to me while also having her overlook it and make sure that everything is fine because I know that that's important as well. It's my life. But yeah, definitely ask, how do I want it to look? What do I want it to look like in the next 3 months, or what I can improve or what I want to change from right now to next year, things like that.
So it sounds like having more collaborative goals with you and kind of talking again, obviously physically talking with you as if you are in the room, because you are in the room, and working with you to kind of negotiate how we can kind of transfer responsibilities from your mom to you, but also in a supportive way that puts you guys together as a team. Sounds like it was something you were looking for, Jennifer, in that moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I don't think I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was 11 years ago, but it was our first, like I said before, our first appointment back, and we walked into the room and I had a notebook list of questions, which I still have 11 years later. And I walked in, and the nurse, I was waiting for the doctor, and the nurse was like, no, or she'll be in a minute, blah, blah, blah. And then the doctor came in and she was like, I really don't have time right now. The nurse will be back. And I was like, wait, what? I just waited 3 months with a 2-year-old. I need you to be here. And she was like, I have an appointment or something. The nurse, and she said, she was like, this is more of a nursing disease. And I was like, oh, okay. And I walked out, and I never went back in. So that was my scarring, terrible incident, and why we chose to go look for a different provider. And like I said, after seeing a few more, finally found one that was a fit.
That's definitely a profound example, I think, Jill, and just really feeling dismissed and feeling like, on the one hand, you've been sitting here having this huge life-changing experience for your family, and it's something you navigate every single moment of the day, and you're waiting for this appointment for months, and then you go in and it's like just something that's maybe considered a blip in someone else's career or life or day, right? And you're not really given the time to be seen as an individual. And I think that was one of the points in one of the first videos actually with you, Clayton, was when the mock skit of the physician came in and was really rushed and kind of moving quickly and didn't have much time, how that can feel really dismissive. And we get it, that providers have busy schedules and they're busy clinics, right? But how important it is to really pause and reflect that this is time you took out of your day to really learn and navigate about a disease that you're living with every single second, and how important it is to really pause and think about that when taking the time to meet with you and hear your story, and make sure that you work together as a team to plan next steps.
Remember that we are people, and sometimes we're very young people and we're very impressionable. And I think that when I was younger, definitely those appointments that I had when I was young are like the blueprint of the way that I approach appointments now. Even though that I've grown, it's been years. I think that those first few appointments, or even just in general, there will be a lasting impression after every appointment. There will be something that will be taken away, and hopefully that's a positive thing. And I think that it's important to make sure to highlight positives and have a more goal-oriented set of discussions or conversations rather than just pointing out what is wrong, because more likely than not, we do know that it is wrong and we need help. It's not just it's wrong and we don't want to do what is right. So
I think like to find the right doctor is important, and to get to know them so they can find the best thing for you.
Mhm.
Thing to say with this context. The first doctor that we had, I tried to go to the best hospital we had locally here.
oh my gosh.
And we went, and we had her for the first years that Jennifer was diagnosed, until we found this one that we have until now that she likes it. But the first doctor, she was the director of the endocrinology department. So she had that business part as well as a clinical part that she saw patients. And every time that I wanted to talk to her about, better manage Jennifer's diabetes or getting a better equipment, like she would just brush it off. No, she's fine with the lenses and the pen. There is nothing that, that it's okay. So I was trying to look for more education. We went and we learned and we decided to put Jennifer on a pump. She wants it. And she's like, oh, you went there and now you learn all this and you have all these ideas. I don't recommend. I said, could you please, because it was really hard with Jennifer's health insurance to get this specific pump, because this was the one that she wanted. And it would be for her, it would go on her body. So the doctor said, no, I am not going to do that because it is medically necessary for Jennifer to have insulin, but not to have that specific pump. I said, okay. So we found another doctor and the doctor did everything and Jennifer got the pump that she wanted.
I think that at the end of the day, it was just about what is good for me and what my lifestyle looks like, rather than on paper what is good for me. I think taking lifestyle and who I am as a person into my care is essential. And I do want to mention that I think it would be great if doctors and physicians could advocate for diabetes conferences or outside of the office visits or conversations. I think that's super important so that people can learn from others or just know that you're not alone. There are other people dealing with this and really important discussions can be had. And I think it was a great experience and I think we should promote it a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think having social support is so important, and being able to connect with other families or other people that live with diabetes and, learn, right? So one thing that keeps getting brought up too is just the ability to educate and to learn and to be heard and to gather all the information possible about what your options are. So Jennifer, I'm hearing from your story, knowing what your options are, but also really importantly, having a provider listen to your lifestyle and your wants and your needs and your desires, and appreciating that you've taken the time to gather information and to educate yourself and to hear you and what might be something that works best for you. And then that teamwork component, right, of having the provider give you some additional education, but also being open to hearing your story, your perspective, and what you think might be best for your health, and then working together to make a decision. And really also advocating for technology, right? That was one part, Clayton, in the video with you and the skit with your provider. One of the not recommended segments was kind of dismissing that you wanted to go on an insulin pump, right, in the skit. And thinking about how important it is to really hear the patient perspective of this could be important for me and this could really help my life. And how can we give you that education then as providers, I think is a huge take home.
So providers being less of a gatekeeper and being open to the ideas of whatever their patient wants. If it's technology, cool. If it's not, cool too. Like, let's figure out how to make it work for you.
Right. Respecting your individuality and your needs and your body and what you're ready for or not ready for, which is okay.
It gives us real life incidents because, she told us most of, her background was the same thing. So, she helps out a lot with like pointers, things he could do. If there's any new devices out there to help, she prescribes it.
Okay.
Basically get them together.
Yeah, that's a really good one you bring up. So the technology part, so really making sure you're educated on the latest technology, you know what your options are for technology. I think it's great when providers talk through like the differences of different types of pumps, sensors, and so you really can choose what's best for you, but showing you what's out there.
Yeah.
What helped us a lot, it was like we read a lot of books, a lot of good books. I know that providers, they probably already know this, but to us, to learn the language, I have never, ever, ever said diabetic anymore in my life. After a book that I read in one night. It was a small book written by, I think she is a doctor now, and she also has diabetes. And I learned how to say a person with diabetes. I never say diabetic anymore after I read that book. So we read a lot. And so I just, like Jennifer said, to see the patient as a whole, and also beyond diabetes, because diabetes is already, it takes a large part of one's life. We don't want to, but unfortunately it does. And it's all the time, constantly. I know she needs to, and she needed, and she's doing all her care now, basically. I help at night, but I just wanted to take some of it. I wanted to ease it for her, because to just give her a little break. So, and to do not emphasize, I know they are endocrinologists and that they're there to talk about diabetes, but to see a person beyond that, because there's so much more, you know.
Letting them know to actually get to know their patients. Don't look at their patient as just their patient, not necessarily looking at them as a friend, but somebody, that you care about.
Yeah. That's great. That's really great. And thinking about that teamwork component and really getting to know you and what works for you and how you're unique and your lifestyle and routine is
Right.
unique.
And
Yeah.
try to avoid like targeting that, the bad things. Try to work more so of teaching how to progress instead of targeting bad things, or telling them the right way to go about it.
Okay. Yeah.
But
So
just to care, just to care.
to care.
Yeah.
That's or is there anything either of you would want to add in reacting to these videos, or anything else that you think would be helpful for providers to know?
Can't wait until it comes out.
I'm excited too. I think it'll be really exciting. We will